Before I start, on the agenda, it says that there's an introductory board training. Is that happening today? No? Okay, then, all right. I now call this meeting into order. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land that, should you just give me 1 second there, people. Don't really want to do this. Okay, we acknowledge that the Students' Union operates on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Shoshone, and Neutral peoples. This land is part of the Haldeman Tract, which is promised to the Six Nations, and we recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this territory. For regrets, I have received regrets from Directors Rutherford and Khattab. They will not be able to make it to this meeting. And are there any conflicts of interest to declare? No, then let's proceed with the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion that the Board of Directors adopt the agenda as presented? Motion by Director Anna, seconded by Vice Chair Ferguson. Is there any discussion on the matter? No, then we can proceed to voting. All of those opposed, all of those abstaining, and all of those in favor? Dr. O'Leary? Caitlin? Okay, want to raise your hand? That's okay. Motion passes 0-0 to 8. Thank you. Moving on to the adoption of the consent agenda. The following monitoring reports were submitted by me, the chair, Dr. Michael. Is there any discussion on the matter? No,
There
they were straightforward.
Sorry, what's happening?
Talking about the adoption of the consent agenda.
Okay,
There's been no comments on the adoption of the consent agenda,
okay.
so we shall proceed to moving for the adoption of the consent.
To accepting, yep,
Yes,
yep.
thank you. So can I have a motion that the Board of Directors, can I have a motion that the Board of Directors adopted the consent agenda as presented? Motion by Director Murphy, seconded by Director Bilodeau. Is there any discussion on the matter? Then we shall proceed to voting. All of those opposed? All of those abstaining? And all of those in favor? Motion passes 0-0 to 8. Thank you. Proceeding to the approval of meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes of the last meeting? No? Okay. Then, can I have a motion that the Board of Directors approve the meeting minutes of the February 2nd, 2026 meeting? Motioned by Director Zhao, seconded by Director O'Leary. Is there any discussion on the matter? No, then we shall proceed to voting. All of those opposed? All of those abstaining? And all of those in favor? Motion passes 0-0 to 8. Guys, we're so efficient. Like, wow, okay. Okay. Moving on to comments from the chair of the board and CGO. Good morning, guys. Welcome back from reading week. Thank you all for coming. I hope you guys have been well so far. I don't really have a lot of comments, so I will now pass it off to President Joby.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Nice to see you all post reading week. Hopefully it was a well-rested and well-spent week. Couple updates to provide for you today. So we have reopened a couple of vice president applications as per the discretion of President-elect Jessica Lee. So we have reopened the applications for clubs and associations and programming and services on the Brantford campus. So those applications are reopened until this Thursday at noon. So if you or anyone you know might be interested, we are just encouraging general promotion to folks to try and get people to apply for those positions. The associate vice president applications have closed as of last week, Friday. So that subsequent hiring process will also start with the new incoming VPs. Some touches on some personal projects. So the student consultation form that Shayok and I had put out went well. We had given kind of like a soft cap on responses for yesterday at 11:59 so that we can kind of start to compile those for our in-person focus groups. We had 230 student responses on our Qualtrics, which we were very pleased about. So we appreciate all those who filled it out. We also appreciate campus partners who helped co-promote the form as well. So as mentioned, now we are curating the focus groups with students that will be facilitated next week. So we have 2 in-person focus groups on the Waterloo campus and 1 on the Brantford campus. So we're hoping to finish up the questions and send out those invites to the students who mentioned that they were interested. For today's student engagement specifically, we're going to continue to ask generally about what students are experiencing, but we're also inviting students to share their concerns about the recent OSAP changes, as that's something that's been very prevalent for a lot of students over the last couple of weeks. And on the topic of that, Shayok and I have been called in to do a couple of interviews with different news networks over the last couple of weeks. Him more than myself, naturally, through his position with USA, but both of us has kind of been tapped on the shoulder to provide our comments on behalf of the union and for him specifically on behalf of USA. So that's stuff that you can find available if that's stuff that's interested to you. And yeah, just something that's very prevalent that we're continuing to deal with right now, as a lot of students are providing their feedback and concerns with us. 2 weeks ago was Federal Advocacy Week. So myself, Shayok, and his 2 associate vice presidents were in Ottawa from Monday to Wednesday. So we had meetings with a couple MPs, and it was a really great opportunity for the 4 of us to advocate for students on a federal basis and have some really great meetings and productive conversations. So we were really happy with the outcome of that. And next week, Thursday to the following Sunday, a handful of us will be away for Spring General Assembly with USA. So that will be at Western in London this go around. And the papers are on tuition, ancillary, and incidental fees, student mobility and credit transfer, and artificial intelligence. And so we are currently wrapping up delegate review feedback period. Delegate review and feedback period. So then following that, we'll be ready to make the last couple amendments to those policy papers when General Assembly takes place next week. And yeah, those are my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any comments or questions for Ryan at this moment? Vice Chair Ferguson?
Just curious on the vice president applications. Were they reopened on the basis of a lack of interest, or why were they reopened at that?
I won't very explicitly share the decision behind it, but we had gone through kind of the initial process with the applications that were received, and as per the discretion of Jessica, she thought it was in her best interest to reopen it. So that is something that we have chosen to do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on to comments from Phil.
Yep, not a whole bunch to add, but I would like to shout out that the contract teaching faculty and the university have come to a tentative agreement. So hopefully the union kind of approves that and any threat of a work action disappears. But congratulations to those negotiating teams for working very diligently into the wee hours of this current morning to get something done. So that's awesome. So as of right now, no impact on students. Fantastic. Ryan and I met with VP External Jason Kuhlman and Victoria Joseph, who oversees the development for student affairs specifically, to discuss the extension of the student life levy agreement that exists on the Brantford campus. We're looking at potentially doing a 2-year extension of that agreement in an effort to focus specifically on soliciting student projects. Because typically over the last handful of years, it's been very staff and faculty heavy, which I found out last week is largely probably because of the loophole. It doesn't actually get emailed out to students. So there's a lot of questions as to how that happened. And we will be following up with Victoria on that particular regard. But we are looking to kind of figure out and have specific measurables on how we can kind of get students better engaged in that fund if we're going to continue assessing that fee on the Brantford campus. A few quick little hitters. The food services contract RFPs are now due. And we will be working with our partners at the university to kind of oversee what that looks like in terms of awarding a new contract for the fall of 26. That decision is expected towards the end of March. The Students' Union is also working with our partners in Student Affairs and Facilities Asset Management to find temporary office space on the Waterloo campus, as the Waterloo campus, Fred Nichols Campus Center, will be closed as of May 1st toward about the middle of August to have the air handling project that we've been dealing with for a number of years, have that work actually executed. So we're trying to see what that looks like with facilities. Conversations have been slow so far, but we are optimistic that we'll be fine in the big picture. Yeah, and that's about it.
Thank you, Phil. Are there any questions for Phil at this moment? No? Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Direct Inspection Committee report. Yes, 1 second. Let me just quickly pull that up. Yes, so the Direct Inspection Committee for EL2J and BMD2A met. Okay, so the Direct Inspection Committee for EL2G and BMD2A met on the 27th of January to discuss again to review and assess the executive limitations of 2G and BMD2A. The committee consisted of Chair Haptamichael, Vice Chair Ferguson, Director Anas, and Director O'Leary. And the committee had essentially two recommendations and a question to present to the board for discussion. So the first recommendation, we discussed executive limitations 2G, and the addition that we wanted to make was to present the formal report to the board annually as an item for discussion. This came because I remember we were discussing the SU annual report, and that it is sort of presented, but it isn't presented to the board as an item for discussion. So we wanted to add that on the agenda when it is presented, so that every year the board could discuss the annual report. It's okay. So we wanted to add like a the report would be present the formal report to the board annually as an item for discussion. We can work on the wording of it, but ideally what we wanted is that every other board would discuss the formal report as well. So EL2J, 2G, and BMD2A was remain aware of their motions to ensure they're not disruptive unless necessary for the board to function. Let me just very quickly go into that so I can turn. Okay, so in EL2G, what we wanted to change was like number 14. It says that allow the board to be without a formal report on the progress of the strategic plan at the end of each fiscal year. We wanted the addendum to that policy to say that like it would be presented to the board as well as an item for discussion every year. And so when when the strategic plan is being go ahead.
So some context with that is that the current strategic plan ended in 2025. And one of the pieces of feedback that we've received in the past from governance experts is that because of the guiding principles, the strategic plan was just another iteration of the same material. So operationally, the teams have been moving towards operational department plans that they work through on an annual basis. But at this point, we have not sought to undertake another strategic plan because it's often been repetitive of the ends policy and the guiding principles that are set. So
Okay.
that is just some general context there.
Okay, that's actually good context to have. But the idea was that because every year there's going to be a new board, so whether the materials are being are repetitive or not, the goal is that like every year the board could discuss a new board could discuss the same like strategic plan. So there could be multiple interpretations of it, but the goal is to have it become an item for discussion. It was the sort of goal. So if we do decide to go back with the strategic plan, we want that to be an idea there. And then, sorry, you have something to say, Phil? Ian? No? Okay. And then with BMD2A, yes. And then with BMD2A, Yeah, so it says that the board will, like, so BMD2A2 is remaining, the board will remain cognizant of their motions to ensure that they do not take a material amount of staff time or funds, nor are disruptive unless necessary for the board to function. We wanted to add to that, to say remain aware of their motions to ensure they're not disruptive unless necessary for the board to function. Yes, sorry.
So just to kind of add to the background as to why that is, I always kind of found that the policies are extremely boring. So in terms of that policy, what we kind of agreed upon is it was just information overload, and we found we could get the same message across using less wording. So that was the reason behind the changes at point 2 in BMD2A.
Was to ensure that it's more clear for students to think. And then yes.
So are you trying to add in a point to ensure motion clarity? The word disruptive here feels like it may be prone to misinterpretation, but if what you're seeking is that message or that motions are presented like clearly, that there may be a different way to articulate that point.
Want to add to that?
You can take it from it. I'm pulling up the.
Okay. I think the reason why we went with disruptive was because in the board policy itself in BMD2A2, it states disruptive as well. And so that's why we went with it. But the entire goal is to ensure that like they're clear from now on. So if we use language that's Vice Chair Ferguson.
Yeah, so the policy as it reads right now is to remain cognizant of, so we decided to remain cognizant of their motions to ensure that they do not take a material amount of staff time. So let me just make sure. Yeah, so okay. So we found, so the word disruptive, we can argue kind of both sides of the coin on this, because it does explicitly state that it takes like to make sure that our motions do not take a material amount of staff time. But we found that word material then was also up to interpretation, which is why disruptive was suggested later on. So that's why we instead chose to use the word disruptive rather than keep the material amount of staff time and funds, because we thought that that was self-explanatory with the word disruptive.
Yeah, I think so if you're looking to basically keep the intent of point 2, but clarify the wording.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I just wonder if you remove the first part of it, do you then miss what it's being disruptive of? And then is it just left considering, then is it just that you're worried about motions being disruptive, but a subsequent board maybe would, and what they would infer that to mean without the reference to staff time? Do you know what I'm getting at?
I completely get your point, and Connell, I'll pass it on to you to explain before I make my set point.
I wasn't going to explain on behalf of you. I was more so just wondering if it's just a language issue, but everyone's on the same page. If reforming the language would be the best choice from here on out, would that make the most sense to just kind of go back on that and just change the language so the same policy can kind of we can move forward with it, but just change the language so it's more so inclusive to everyone?
Yeah, so like I think the biggest thing that I saw coming in to my board term was that a lot of the policies didn't necessarily have extremely easy to understand language. So I think the main point of that one especially was just to clarify wording. So we do want to deliver the same point across. So like this was more so as an option for discussion in terms of seeing what that wording would be. Would it make more sense because I do understand your point, Ian, 100%. could it be not disruptive of students' union operations, non-disruptive of staff operations? Like, we can play with the wording a little bit, I think.
Yeah, that's good with us. It's because we were discussing we were essentially discussing the what is it the to ensure that they do not take a material amount of staff time or funds nor are disruptive, and we felt like it could just be shortened to just remain aware of their motions and to be cognizant. I think what was it right there? Yeah, remain aware of their motions to ensure they're not disruptive unless necessary for the board to function. The entire goal is to ensure that like it's to be clear is the goal. And for any other new directors who are coming in the next couple of years, it's an easier motion or an easier policy to access is the goal. We're okay if you don't necessarily want to use the what we have provided.
Yeah, I'm definitely not arguing that as it's written, it's clear now. I just wonder like is there just a better instruction in there? Because the current language, I agree, definitely is not very clear. Maybe there's a simplified way of saying the same thing that it is more accessible to everyone.
We felt at the time that what we have written for the recommendation is okay, but again, if we could even have a consultation on that matter as well, and either have that become a discussion for all the policies that we have or for that specific policy. Dr. Ward?
Yeah, I took issue with the wording there, just as I believe it was too short. I like the original motion, how it's worded. I know we can, nitpick different things. I think it's more of a how it reads issue necessarily, like the formatting of the language. Because I feel like when you take out too much, it causes it to not necessarily be as clear. If that makes sense.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. I guess, can we end this discussion at this point now, people? Yeah, okay, great. And then additionally, so the recommendation was for 2 changes. And then we also had a question that we wanted to ask.
Sorry, are you moving ahead with the change as proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. And then additionally, we did have a question. Corey, do you want to ask the question? Do you want to take a while?
Does it, since we already had kind of,
I mean, it did, right?
so basically what our question was in terms of the strategic plan, because we didn't see that updated document. So I mean, I think it kind of like it would be beating a dead horse to ask it now that you've already said that, Ian. I'm just wondering in terms of, so I actually do have a question on the strategic plan, because like, as you said, the last thing that we want is a whole bunch of documents that are just piggybacking off of one another. By moving the strategic plan into the individual, I believe you said the operation plan for each department. Could you explain that again?
Yeah, so I mean, we can formally put together a brief for the next meeting. Because ultimately nothing has been decided. It's just the current one is expiring. And we've been experimenting with a few different operational concepts to basically try and execute what the strategic plan is supposed to be doing in terms of, for many organizations, the strategic plan is about the visioning. Clearly, we have the visioning part already. So it's the conversations have been mostly directed at what's the better kind of mechanism or tool for executing the vision piece. So if it's helpful, we can put together a brief and a conversation for the next meeting that better sums up where we've been and our kind of recommendation for where we want to go. And then the board could decide whether they felt that was sufficient or if you want to proceed with another strategic planning process.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the biggest things that I saw, and this is something that we can bring up next week of the brief, I think that would be a good idea, is kind of what we were going with the strategic plan was we wanted it to be accessible for people because we thought that it was well worded enough that people should know that when they're applying for SU roles, such as the board, such as associate vice president roles, such as all of them. So we thought that that should be included in terms of the stuff that the applicant can see right at the front in terms of their in their election guide. As a link, it's a long document. But yeah, I think we can discuss that later on.
Yeah, I think we were balancing the fact that we had kind of multiple ways of saying the same thing and had been, I think, cognizant of that maybe creating some unnecessary confusion, and that in combination with some of the feedback from the policy governance expert that says, you already have an articulated strategic vision, why is there some duplication? So we can build that kind of reflection in and then provide an update on kind of where some of the clarity we think could be helpful, and then the board can kind of decide whether they feel that's sufficient or if you want to go in a different direction.
I mean, kind of last point for me. I mean, I think definitely we should get that brief for next meeting, and we can talk about it further in depth there. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Are there any other comments on the DIC report submitted? If not, we can proceed to the passing of it. So can I have a motion that the board passes the Direct Inspection Committee report of BMD2A and EL2G? Motion by Director Murphy, seconded by Director O'Leary. Is there any discussion on the matter? Yes, Mr. Ferguson?
Sorry, do we need to approve each policy on its own, or are we just doing this as a blanket?
Blanket.
Okay. One thing I do want to bring up, because I do understand Ian's point about the wording. So do we want to add something to the back of that for the second point for BMD2A to say not disruptive? The only point is, I like now that I'm looking at this, like I see the issue. Just because it's not not disruptive is a very broad sense. Like it doesn't actually get the kind of siding with Director Ward's point here. It doesn't actually address the take a material amount of staff time or funds in our recommendation. So how do we want to juggle that point, or do we think it's not needed?
Then I guess we can make we could pass EL2G and then state that we would leave BMD2A for review.
What if you added, what about operationally disruptive? And then the monitoring report would kind of provide some more guidance in terms of what that meant. I don't know.
Unless operationally disruptive, you mean?
So it would read remain aware of their motions to ensure they are not operationally disruptive unless necessary for the board to function.
Yeah, like I'm trying to imagine a scenario that this is trying to guide against, where the board's instructing staff to put together some package on something that the board's not actually able to. Sure, if you can think of any examples, like if there's a decision that the board thinks it wants to make, requests the organization to put a bunch of material together, but the board doesn't actually have the authority to make that decision. That's broadly, I'm not even really sure what that would look like, but I think operationally disruptive maybe gives you like a bit more clarity in the language there. I'm not sure. It's hard because I don't have a kind of tangible example of kind of what we're looking to prevent.
I do understand your point, though. Definitely.
It might be worth, like, we might be able to kind of reach out to Catherine, who's one of the consultants that helped put all of this together for us, and see if she has some tangible examples that can kind of better paint a portrait. I can't guarantee she'll respond in time.
The other thing is I can do a bit of research too. If you want to table this report to the next meeting, I can provide a few other language options that the board can consider.
I mean, yeah, I think EL2G we could pass, but I would like kind of further guidance from a professional in terms of the wording and how we can still get the message across in more inclusive language.
Okay. I mean, if we're going for that anyways, EL2G as well as discussing the strategic report as well. So I guess we will have a better decision on, again, the strategic report as well anyways. So if that's the case, then we should just table this until the next meeting, okay? Do I need to call a motion for that? Do I need to call a motion for that, or?
Yeah, you can motion to table the report.
Okay. Can I have a motion that the Board of Directors tables the Direct Inspection Committee report until the next meeting? Motion by Director O'Leary, seconded by Director Murphy. Is there any discussion on the matter? No, okay, then let's proceed to voting. All of those opposed? All those abstaining? And all of those in favor? Motion passes 0-0 to 8. Thank you all so much. Okay. And now we proceed to the in-camera session. So can I have a motion that the Board of Directors move to the in-camera session? Motion by Vice Chair Ferguson, seconded by Director Zhao. Is there any discussion on the matter? No, then let's proceed to voting. All of those opposed, all of those abstaining, and all of those in favor? Dr. Ward? Motion passes 0-0 to 8. Thank you all.